the channel. So today is Sunday, January 28th. I believe it's the 28th. And today I want to do my January wrap-up video because I know I have a really busy week coming ahead, and so I know it's not February yet, but it's the very end of January, and I just have a feeling that if I don't do it right now, then it'll be like really late. And so I'd rather do the January wrap-up now and then do like a February's anticipated reads video in like a couple days. So for January, I read 16 books this month, which I was not expecting at all, but I got into like I was just like binging books. I just could not put them down this month. So I also, I haven't really ever talked about this on the channel, but I work full-time throughout the week, and I work about 40 minutes away from where I live. It's like 35 to 40 minutes. And so I have a lot of time on my drive to be audiobooking books. So I also read so much because I audiobook a lot, but I also read a ton when I'm home. So it's kind of like a 50-50 balance of listening to books on my drive to work and my drive home from work, and then also reading when I'm home. So I'm gonna try to keep them in order of what I read first to what I read last, and then only 2 of them are on my Kindle that I don't have in the physical copy. And so instead of trying to pull them up on my Kindle, I'm just gonna like pop a picture up over here or over here or something. So the first book that I read, and I've already gone through some of these, by the way. Early January, I did another video where I did like a January's reads so far type thing. But I'm gonna go through them all again and give like a little bit of my rating for each of them. And I'm gonna keep reaching down here because there's too many of them for me to have up here. So, first book was Lisa Jewell, None of This Is True. This book was recommended by multiple people to me, and I saw a lot of people on Instagram and YouTube reading this book and loving it. And so I was like, why not start January off with a book that's gonna have me like hooked. I wanted something that was gonna keep me hooked, and this delivered. It was really, really great. I loved this book. It was a little weird, but in like a good way. Weird in a way that I did not want to put it down, and I did want to keep reading to figure out what was going to happen in the end. So this one was really good. Also, I will say about this one, the audiobook I did listen to for part of it while I was driving to work, and I highly recommend the audiobook because there's like a part in this book, one of the main characters has like a podcast, and there's a part of the audiobook where anytime it like jumps to a cut or a scene or whatever, like a little snippet of the podcast, it actually would change to a different narrator would narrate the podcast, and it actually had background noise like you were listening to a podcast. Like it no longer sounded like the audiobook, if that makes sense. Like the narrator, it changed to sound like you were actually listening to a podcast. It was one of the coolest experiences while listening to an audiobook, because most of the time they don't really change up like that. And so it made me feel very immersed to the point where I was like a little bit spooked when I was listening to it really early in the morning and it was dark outside. I kind of was like, okay, this book's freaking me out just a little bit, but not like to where I was really scared, but just a little bit freaked out. It was kind of perfect. So I loved this book. I think I gave this one a 4 out of 5, and I feel like that's a pretty highly rated book for me. And the next book was Olivia Blake, Alone with You in the Ether. So this book is a romance book, but it's different than any other romance book I've ever read before. Olivia Blake's writing is very specific. Like I've never really read many authors that write like her. She writes very scholarly, if that helps at all describe what I'm trying to talk about. And so I feel like she has a lot of people who absolutely adore her books, and then a lot of people who don't like her writing at all. And I don't really know where I fall in that. Like, some of her books I have enjoyed, but I wouldn't really say that I've loved any of them particularly, which is really, really sad to me because I want to love them really bad. And every time I start reading them, I just have like the hardest time keeping my attention on them. So I think I rated this one like a 3 out of 5, which is still good. Like, I didn't dislike the book, and I would still probably recommend it to certain people, but I wouldn't recommend it to everyone. And I kind of feel that way about all of her books. So yeah, this one was very interesting, and the main characters had like, they were just very, very interesting characters, and so I did like them. I liked the book, but yeah, again, I would definitely recommend it, but just to certain people, not everyone. So then my third book was a reread, and this one is in anticipation of what is coming out very, very soon. And that was House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. This is book 2 in the Crescent City series, and book 3 is to be released on Tuesday, January 30th. And I have been waiting since the release day of this book to get book 3. And so I'm very, very, very eager to get my hands on book 3. And I cannot wait to devour every single page of that book, because if any of you have read this, you know that the ending leaves us off on quite the cliffhanger. And so she's been teasing us with book 3, but this is 5 out of 5. Some people think that this book was like too long and boring and blah, blah, blah. I had like, I don't know. A lot of people, I've heard lots of mixed reviews on how people felt about this book. They say that like the last 100 pages is the only good part of this book. I highly disagree. I just really, really love this series. I love the Crescent City series. It's very, very different from all of her other series, but I love it, and I highly recommend these as well. These are definitely 5 out of 5 stars for me. So that was a very, very fun read at the beginning of the year. And yes, it is ginormous, but I feel like if you enjoy it, it really, I mean, it took me less time to read than I feel like this one did. So I literally read this in less time than I read this one. So it has nothing to do with the page count for me. It has to do with it keeps my attention, and if I love the book and the story and the characters. And so yeah, those are the first 3 books of January. Then my 4th book of January was Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. This one was one that I got for Christmas in the end of 2023 and was dying to read because I really love Ali Hazelwood, but all of her other ones that came before this have been like STEM, science-y romances, which I love, and I have all of them, but I was very excited to read something else by her, and so Check and Mate I was super excited about. And this is YA, and I absolutely loved this book, like 4.5 or 4.75 out of 5. This was like, I really, really loved this book. This was a great one. Highly recommend to pretty much anybody. Then the next read was actually 2 books in a duology, so I'm just going to do them together. And that was Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows. These are actually my ones. And these books are by Rebecca Ross, and they recently came out. I think Divine Rivals came out like a year or 2 ago, but Ruthless Vows just was released this year, or in 2023. Oh, actually, this says 2023. So I don't know. Maybe they were both released in 2023. But I didn't pick up Divine Rivals until when Ruthless Vows came out, but I read both of them immediately and loved this series. I loved it. I read it so quickly. I seriously think I like started and finished each of them in like a day or two, because they're not super long. I mean, I feel like it really isn't that long. And it really captured my attention and had me hooked from the beginning till the very end. And so I really, really loved these, and I highly recommend them to, again, pretty much anybody, but they're kind of like, they're so hard to explain once you've read like all the way through, because you have to try to think of like the beginning and the best way to describe them. But I highly recommend Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows. Great reads. Then my next reads of January were more rereads, and that was the whole Cruel Prince trilogy. Again, they're backwards because they were on the shelf like this. But starts with The Cruel Prince. The second book is Wicked King. And then the third book is The Queen of Nothing. These books follow two main characters, Jude Duarte and Carden Greenbrier. And it's honestly, they're YA, they're fantasy. They take place in a fantasy realm called a fairy. And it's basically about a human girl who is taken to the land of fairy with her two sisters. One of her sisters is fae, and the other one is her twin sister, who's also human. And how they basically live and grow up in fairy, how they're bullied by the other fae, and all that. But Jude wants to be like this really, really known, highly respected, what's it called? Oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking. But she basically wants to like fight for the fae, which is funny because she's always been bullied by the fae, so why would you want to fight for them? Who knows? But she does. And it starts there and it goes on 3 books. I absolutely love this series. I read it a couple of years ago when the last book came out. I bought the whole series and I binged them, and I hadn't reread them since, and so this was my first reread since I read them when they came out, and I loved them just as much the second time around as I did the first. So yeah, these are also like 5 out of 5, but they're rereads, so I knew they were going to be 5 out of 5s. I just was kind of in the mood for this type of story again. Plus, Holly Black just released a second story that's like I hate to call it a spinoff, but it's a little bit of a spinoff. It takes one of the characters from this series and they get their own story. And so that book is called The Stolen Heir. And then there's the second book to that series coming out very soon in 2024. And so to kind of prepare myself to dive back into that series, I really wanted to get back into the world of fairy and reread all of these. So that's what I did. And then my next book was our book club book, which is One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. This book, again, this is by Olivia Blake, which is the same person who wrote Alone with You in the Ether that I talked about just a minute ago. And again, it's the same thing. Her writing style is very scholarly. She uses a lot of big words, a lot of really fancy words, and not that that's a bad thing at all. I want to love it, and for some reason it doesn't keep my attention, and I wish that it did. So unfortunately for me, this one's probably like a 3.5 out of 5, somewhere right around there. I wanted to love it, and I really liked the plot of it, but I didn't love it, and it didn't really keep my attention. So that's really unfortunate, but I did like it, and I did enjoy it, and I would recommend it to some people, but yeah, just not my favorite. Then I did read another one that I believe I read on my Kindle. So I read The Love Wager by Lynn Painter. I'll pop up a picture over here. Lynn Painter is somebody that I just heard about and started reading her books in 2023. And I absolutely adored her books. I love, love, love them, and I can't stop recommending them to people. The first one I read was, where is it? Over here. Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. Loved, 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 loved this book. Could not stop talking about it, to be honest. I've told multiple people about this book since I read it. This is a YA romance book. And then because of that, I have The Love Wager on my Kindle. And so I read The Love Wager, which is her adult romance novel. And I loved that one as well. Like another 5 out of 5. I highly recommended it. It had every trope that I loved. I loved both main characters. I really, really loved that book. So it spurred me on to go through a whole Lynn Painter reading thing. So then I continued on and I read The Do-Over by Lynn Painter, which I believe I have 2 copies of. But, oh yeah, I do. So I have 2 copies of this. I read The Do-Over by Lynn Painter, and then I read Betting on You by Lynn Painter. And all of them, when I tell you I can't stop talking about all of these books, I cannot stop talking about all of them. Every single one is like, I loved it. I recommend it over and over and over. They were the cutest little romances, cutest YA romances. Every one of them, like the characters have depth to them and they have reasons why they are the way that they are, which I just love. I love when you can connect to the characters on like a deeper level than just like that they are attracted to this guy that you also think could be attractive. But all of these were highly, highly recommended books, as well as The Love Wager, which I do not have in a physical copy, but I have in my Kindle. So these were kind of the end of my January reads. I only have a couple more from these. So I also read Flawless, which is by Elsie Silver, I believe. I don't have that one on me right now. I hope that's who it's by. Maybe it's not. But I read Flawless also this month, which I also really liked. Sorry, I'm pulling it up. I did really like, yes, it is by Elsie Silver. So Flawless, and it is a whole series, so she's got a lot of them. I liked the first book a lot. It was a little too spicy for my taste, but I still would recommend it. It just wasn't my favorite, but I did like it, if that makes sense. I guess maybe 3.5 out of 5 stars. The spice level was a little too much for me personally. But, so I read Flawless as well. And then the last 2 I do have in physical forms. So I read None Like Him by Jen Wilkin, which is a Christian, like, theological book about the 10 ways that God is different from us and why that's a good thing. Me and my friend Abby are going through books together, and we meet weekly on the chapters that we read. And this was one that we read together. And if you're looking for a good book, I did love this one, and I do recommend it. It was a really, really great theology book. And next we're going through a John Piper book together. And then the last book that I read of 2022, I almost said 2023. The last book I read of January was Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I have read one other Abby Jimenez book, and it was a really long time ago. I can't remember what the name of it was, but I think it was called Friend Zone, The Friend Zone. And I don't have that one. I think I read it on my Kindle or something, but I really, really loved this book. So if this is any indication of how I'd feel about the rest of her books, I'm going to keep buying her books, because It was so cute and so heartwarming. I really, really, really loved these characters, especially the main love interest. I felt like he had a lot of depth to his character and why he was the way that he was. I highly recommend this book. This was a really, really good one. It wasn't too spicy for me. I feel like it was kind of the perfect amount. I really, really, really enjoyed this book. 5 out of 5 for romance. This was so, so good. And I do still recommend this book to other people. So that's the end. This is the last book for January, unless I read something in the next couple days, which I might, but if I do, I'll let you guys know when I do like another reading vlog. But that's pretty much it for January. Thank you so much for watching. Look at all these romances that I read at the end of the month. I went from all fantasy to all romance. I don't know what happened, but that's just what happened. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you come back to my next video. Thanks. Bye.